Lauren, we are so excited to chat with you today. So I'd love to just kind of open it up to you and have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you chose a career path in equity financing.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me today. I'm thrilled to be here to speak with you all. So my name is Lauren McCollom. I'm a director on our banking team, and I'm focused on working with early stage companies and venture capital firms. I started working in banking in 2006 as an analyst, so I guess I've been at it for about 15 years now. After being an analyst, I went to the middle market banking area, and I was working with more mature companies and commercial and industrial businesses. And to be honest, I didn't feel like I was adding much value to those companies that I was working with, and it was rather transactional, even for a relationship-focused bank that I was at. So early in my career, I took a lateral move, and I had an opportunity to start working with venture capital funds. And that's when I was really drawn to the faster growing startups at that early building phase. So when I realized I could leverage my banking experience to help founders with more than just their banking needs, but act as a concierge and leverage my network to help them in a variety of ways, that was really, really exciting for me. And seeing an entrepreneur passionate about building something and then seeing that vision come to fruition was pretty inspiring. And it's why I love working with early stage companies and the investors that provide the cash to fuel their growth.
Wow, that sounds exciting. You must be really fascinating to work with founders at all different stages and in different companies.
Yeah, it sure is. You
Um,
can
so,
see the future through their eyes, if you will.
oh wow, that's cool. So if someone is listening to this chat today and they're inspired and want to be in your position one day, what would their role look like?
Yeah, well, like I said, I took, a non-traditional path to get to the role that I'm at. But thankfully, if you come and, are a banker in the early stage practice at Grasshopper, well, I can speak to that, you won't be bored. While the pandemic certainly shifted business development and serendipitous networking avenues that in the past year, in my role, I have the opportunity to connect with founders and investors and other service providers and community stakeholders on a daily basis. I engage with my team internally and external partners in supportive ways to connect and grow my network with the intention of serving my clients. So no 2 days are the same. And I think that could be said for many roles in banking as well as other industries. But to give you a kind of a day in the life of myself, yesterday I started my day with a founder pitch practice session. So I had a founder come in who was going to be going and pitching to investors. So we did a dry run through it where myself and other folks from my team were able to give feedback to them that they could include in their presentation. I connected with the venture studio to learn about the projects that they were working on. I had a few internal meetings around revenue initiatives that I'm leading. I wrapped up my day meeting with a prospect who had questions about banking and wanted to join Grasshopper. So in one day, I was consulting and learning and connecting and strategizing and doing project management and sales. And that was just one day, not including all the emails and phone calls that I attended to as well.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're never bored, very busy, which is great. I'd love to just dive in and ask a question, like just for maybe I'm the only one wondering this, but I'm just curious, what is the difference between private equity and venture capital?
Yeah. So when I like think about that, I think it's kind of the same. But the way that I kind of parse it out is so both private equity and venture capital firms invest in privately held companies and they seek a return on their investment. And a venture capital organization or firm is a subset of private equity. So that's broadly how I would put it. Private equity is synonymous really with buyout firms and leverage takeout, or in the way that I keep it in my mind, it's what Richard Gere did in Pretty Woman. And PE firms are investing in buying ownership in more mature companies. They look to purchase a majority, if not all of a company, and they can be using debt and or equity or cash as part of the transaction. The size of the investments are also a telling factor. So, although in recent years, public markets weren't available, it was kind of hard to tell if it was venture or private equity going in unless you knew the firms. But PE firms usually invest large amounts in a company, so excess of 100 million at once usually. They could be mid-market PE firms. Maybe they're investing 50 million at one round, but usually it's in the tens of millions of dollars. And venture capital is delineated kind of at the stage of investment. And they range from early stage to growing, accelerating companies. They usually have an industry focus at the firm, and they typically are purchasing a minority ownership stake in the company for cash. So they're not going to offer debt. They may do convertible notes, but in the traditional sense, it's cash. The return timeline for venture funds is shorter. So they are going to look to get a return on their investment, usually in 4 to 6 years, I would say. Fund lives are about 10 years. So it's going to be within that 10-year time period. Their investing period is usually the first 5 years, and they try and harvest those investments at the tail end of the fund life. And PE firms can be a little bit more patient in allowing their money to last a little bit longer or not be returned for about 6 to 10 years, I would say.
Interesting. I love the analogy of Richard Gere. Anytime we can talk about Pretty Woman and Richard Gere, we're good. Awesome. So, it sounds like obviously you're working with a ton of founders and owners. So from your perspective of working with startups, what is the one problem all startup owners tend to overlook in their initial stages?
Okay, so I don't want to overgeneralize, but one thing a founder does not get back is their time. So picking the wrong co-founder, the wrong bank, the wrong investor can cost that founder time. And time is what I view to be the most precious resource for any founder. I've also seen a lot of fraud take place, usually friendly fraud. So I always advise my clients, keep track of your cash. Don't avoid overdrawing your account, giving unfiltered access to the bank accounts to employees unless they have a need to have that access. Don't share credit cards or debit cards, and certainly don't share bank login information. It seems kind of, best practices and kind of common sense, but it happens all the time. And those can cause financial problems with a company at any stage. And it's more commonly seen at the early stages when there's not a professional finance staff with oversight and good governance put in. So be diligent with your time, do your research up front, and keep an eye on your cash. And the one thing I would add to that is, always build a network and be thoughtful in building that network. Because the network can carry you for different avenues and different ways that you are going to look to build your company and grow professionally and personally throughout life.
That's good. That's some really good insight. So you mentioned this before, and you just mentioned it again. I'm kind of interested in hearing, how have you been kind of networking and reaching new kind of contacts over the past, what month are we now? 15, 16 of this?
Yeah. I think, networking starts with your clients, right? And I think that that's a really easy way to get to know new people. We do have the benefit of being a digital bank at Grasshopper. So we have awesome entrepreneurs coming and joining us organically by just seeing our website and joining the bank. There's been a lot of virtual networking events, but I've also touched base with all of my standing referral partners, people that support the economy, the innovation economy broadly, and just really ensuring that we're connecting and staying in touch and always asking, who else should I connect with? And I think that's an important point when building a network. Ensure that they're the right people that you want to connect with, and be willing to give and get. It's not always about what can I get from this network, or this individual or the service provider, but how can I support them and make them look the best? And then in turn, it'll benefit me and my network, and then therefore my clients.
Love that. That's some great suggestions or great ideas and ways that it sounds like you've been busy for, until we're back to, face-to-face happy hours or lunches or, all the things that
I can't wait to go to lunch and happy hour. Just go to a demo day and run into new and exciting people. That is missed.
Yes. I'm joking that I'm going to wear like a cocktail gown to my first event. I'm going to be like, oh, what? This little thing?
This isn't how we dress anymore. Okay. Yeah.
Or we had a great question from the audience. How did you start working in your field?
Great question. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe to even take it a step back, because it sounds like initially you wanted to go into banking and then you kind of pivoted into the banking that you're in now. But is there something that made you get into the field initially and then kind of made you also move into where you're at with Grasshopper?
Yeah, so there was a lot of transition periods. I actually wanted to be a CPA, oddly enough. I had this vision of doing books for people while sitting at the park, and I thought that was going to be reality. And part of my work, I was working at Wells Fargo out of college, so I had an internship with them as an analyst, and I had the privilege of enjoying my work with them. And I really, my father was a mortgage broker, still is actually, here in the Bay, and I really loved the projects that he was working on. He was taking dilapidated warehouses in Oakland and throughout the East Bay, actually, and working with lenders to help those developers convert those projects into live work offices and just really interesting buildings, and keeping the history of the building, making it look like a warehouse, but having these huge floor to ceiling windows. And he was doing that working with commercial banks. So I was like, well, I can go and learn the inside out of how to lend commercial on commercial properties, and maybe I'll go into commercial real estate or go and be a mortgage broker with my father. But then Wells was like, hey, we're going to pay for some accounting classes. And I was like, well, maybe I can do the CPA route. So it was this weird path that brought me there. But I will say that Wells had a great training program. And in part of the training program, you got to see various lines of business that I wasn't exposed to previously. And as a consumer in the banking space, your relationship is with your ATM card, right? So, or today your app, and that wasn't the case when we got to commercial banking. There's so many different lines of business. There's international, there's domestic, there's insurance, there's mortgage, there's a whole host of banking and financial service products that were sold through them. So they did a really great job of providing avenues of learning and opportunity to see what else was out there and what you were passionate about. And when I went into the creative training program, coming out of that, it was the financial crisis. So I didn't really have much of a choice of where I was going. There was 0.8 jobs in 2008 when I graduated. They're usually in this training program are 3 to 4, and you have the pick of, are you going to go to corporate banking and work with, Coke and Pepsi, or are you going to stay in, are you going to go into branch banking even? Or are you going to go to workout, which a lot of my colleagues had to do because of the financial crisis we were in. So, there really wasn't a strong path that was laid out, but I was fortunate to stay in commercial banking. I was fortunate to be working in Palo Alto, and I was just surrounded by startups. You could throw a rock and you would hit so many startups there. And there was some energy that comes with that type of community and that type of ecosystem. And I wanted to be a part of it. And I found a path to that just through being open to taking a lateral move and being open to whatever opportunities came my way, and really taking the truth and honest look at, am I going to learn from this? Am I going to build my network? Am I going to build my relationships through senior leadership at the organization? Is there a path here? Is there growth opportunity? So I was able to kind of, long way around saying, take this little internship that I had and turn it into a career, which I didn't think I was going to be doing. And at Wells, I co-founded a group with a woman working with startups. And so when the financial crisis kind of subsided, we were like, wow, there's going to be all these really cool companies coming out. Let's work with them. And that was an awesome time to be working with companies. And so that's really where I kind of found my passion of working with startups and really wanting to roll up my sleeves and help them, and found great success in doing it, both for myself and being passionate about what I do, and then for the companies that I'm working with as well.
Awesome. So it sounds like being open to different types of internships, and then also being kind of open to the idea of pivoting and kind of taking that experience and thinking about how it can fuel something you're passionate about. Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's another question from the audience, and it says, how can we take the lead in projects? How can we take the lead in projects in your company? Or I guess, how do you, maybe I'll reframe it. How do you take lead in projects?
Yeah, so there's various, lines of business that we're kind of spinning up at Grasshopper, and there's companies that come to us and fintechs that come to us that have these great ideas, but they need a banking partner to do it. And so just being open to, not saying no because it's a bank, but just hearing what they're trying to do and seeing if there's a path to do it with them and be a partner to them is how I was able to kind of take lead. It's just asking. I asked a company, I want to be your banking partner. I want to fuel your growth. I want you to ride our rails. Can we make this happen? And that's how the project, one of the projects I'm working on just now got kicked off.
Awesome. So speaking of Grasshopper, how is Grasshopper serving the innovation economy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, broadly, we were built to serve the innovation economy. We were built to ensure that regardless of race, gender, and geography, that all founders had a bank where they could speak with an experienced banker, get the service they need, regardless of their funding stage, their investor base, what accelerator they graduated from. There's no pattern matching at Grasshopper. And as I mentioned, we're not a pure play venture bank. So we support founders and their companies, even if they're not taking investor money. And so it's, some other banks, you might not get a dedicated banker and you might not get the attention that you really, really need at this early stage when you're just figuring it out. And, most people have 15 years of banking experience and know the ins and outs of a commercial bank. So to be able to lean on someone who has that expertise is really empowering and frees you up to do what you're good at, which is building a company and focusing on those opportunities and obstacles and milestones that you have to hit, meet, and overcome. So with getting rid of the pattern matching that we did at our bank, by putting our bank account application online, any founder in the innovation economy is welcome to apply to work with us. I will say, if my compliance team is listening, I'll mention that we do not bank cannabis and crypto companies at the time, but most other companies are welcome. Our digital nature allows us to reach entrepreneurs in all corners of the US, and our team's deep network and experience from working with companies, as well as investors in the tech ecosystem, enables us to capitalize on our collective shared experience and serve clients as they grow and scale. I will say one big thing that we're doing to support the innovation economy is really offering free basic banking for life. We're offering that to companies who join Grasshopper and make us your primary bank. And again, for my my compliance people on the line, terms and conditions do apply. It's not being promoted indefinitely, but that's been one clear way that we've been really able to support the innovation economy and keep allow startups to keep their cash in their bank to fuel the growth of their business and not spent on bank fees. And then separately, I think other ways that we support is really understanding, not every founder is created equal, and the digital nature of our bank enables us to spend time educating our clients and holding their hand through challenges that they didn't know that they were going to face. The history that we have in working with so many companies allows us to share best practices that we've seen and do's and don'ts, so that they can, not share debit cards and have fraud go on their account, and ensure that they have good governances in place, that they'll be successful in building a good foundation. So the hands-on nature of how we work with our clients, and the ability for my clients to call my cell phone or text me and ask me a question nights and weekends, I think that's also representative of, we know that you don't do your banking, during normal business hours. You do it when you find some spare time. And so we want to be here to support you when you need us.
Well, that brings up a really interesting question, because I know when Meg was introducing, she said you have children or spend some time at the park, and then talking about being on call nights and weekends. How do you have? I don't even is work-life balance even a thing anymore? Work-life integration? How do you do that?
I have a very supportive family. No, I think that's part of it. I shout out to my preschool, who's been in-person learning since June. and a nanny share. So I have support. I don't do this alone. But I think it's also balance, work-life balance is key. If you're not having fun doing what you love, it's going to feel really painful. But I also did take off the other. I don't have a doorknob on the other side, so the kids can't actually break in here. So that gives me a nice little space where where I can do my work. And I think that it's just being flexible. And we all have smartphones. We can reply to an email on the weekend. It's not going to take away too much time from our family.
Yeah. That is probably the best tip I have heard. I really wish I could take off the door handle.
Yeah, and it's just one side of the door handle. I have to be able to get out.
Oh, that is true. But the other side. Awesome. Well, that is great advice. So, in the last few minutes, a couple questions. Kind of one, if you can think back, so it sounds like you've been in banking now for 15 years. If you can think back to when you started, what advice would you kind of give yourself as you're starting off in the industry?
Yeah. I think, be really open and collaborative with your colleagues. And that could be across the organization. Ask questions, be really inquisitive, and try and find a niche that feels like it's authentic for yourself. If I was a branch banker, that wouldn't feel very authentic to me because I would be so transactional. But I was able to find a path that was kind of built by myself. So, leverage your colleagues, pick their brains, get in touch with senior managers, get mentors in your organization and outside of your organization, leverage your alumni. I heard someone the other day say, oh yeah, when you have that at EDU, reaching out to other people in LinkedIn or at organizations that you aspire to be at and chatting with them and just picking their brains. I mean, I think that they'd be receptive to that as well. And I know I did that.
Some great advice. How can someone kind of either stay connected to you, support Grasshopper, or learn a little bit about Grasshopper?
Always happy to chat. Always happy to chat with folks and stay in touch. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You're welcome to reach out to me. My email address is lauren.mccallum@grasshopper.bank. Pretty accessible that way. So feel free to reach out. I'm here for you. Here to support.
Awesome. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation, and it's learn about kind of the world that you're in regards to founders. So we really appreciate having an opportunity to chat with you. In the last minute or so, anything for us in regards to your journey or anything that you feel like we didn't get to touch today?
No, I think we covered so much of my journey. I will say, if anyone's interested in joining Grasshopper or learning more, we are hiring. We are a growing company. So we have a LinkedIn page with some of the job openings that we have. So, check it out, reach out. Happy to connect with you and share more about either the bank or the industry of banking, best practices to get in, or if you're a founder and you want to work with us, we welcome the opportunity. And I'm stoked by what you guys are doing here at PowerToFly. It's just super impressive and very needed and much appreciated. So thank you. And thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, Lauren. I see Meg and our next group jumping on. So I will let Meg kind of bring us on to the next session. But thank you again for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks.